So as an American, there's two things we definitely understand here quite well. One, our healthcare system is ass. I don't think there's any American who will ever tell you that, yes, I love my for-profit healthcare that screws me over and basically takes all my money and gives me little to no real actual healthcare benefits. And God forbid you get sick with something that's long term, like, oh God, I don't know, cancer or something. Yeah, God forbid you get something like that, because if the cancer doesn't kill you, the hospital bill sure as fuck will. And the other thing we can understand as Americans is that customer service jobs are not the most pleasant things in the world to work. You're underpaid, and you're basically meant to sit there and listen to the angriest people in the world yell at you about their problems with the service your company is providing, or with the product your company provided, or with something that they don't know how to navigate. Like, for example, the company's website or something, they don't know how to use it, especially when it's a boomer on the line. Things like this. Basically, these two things are not very well received. So what happens when you combine both of them? Well, like bleach and ammonia, you get something that's very toxic, and you probably shouldn't, breathe this the fumes of this in. Now, yours truly has some experience with healthcare and customer service. Now, I've been working in customer service for quite some time, and I still do. I've been to different customer service jobs throughout my life. But one job in particular, I worked at a job that was a combination of healthcare and customer service. Now, like I mentioned before, the United States has a for-profit healthcare system. I can already tell you how much I absolutely hate the American healthcare system, and I have my own personal gripes with it from my own past experiences with this abomination of a healthcare system. But when you actually work in it, your experiences are, well, interesting. And by interesting, I don't mean very good. So, some backstory here. So, long ago, back in 2020, yours truly used to work in a healthcare customer service job. It was my first work from home job and my first call center job. Now, anyone who's ever worked in a call center is quite aware that it's not a very glamorous job, and you're pretty much getting paid to get yelled at often. But at times, sometimes if you know how to manage your money well, it's decent pay, and and when it comes to these call center jobs, really what makes or breaks them is not the calls you get, it's the people you work with. Now, fortunately, I am currently working in another call center with coworkers that are much nicer, much friendlier. It's not a very toxic work environment like at my first call center job. But my first call center job in healthcare, I basically used to work for a pharmaceutical company, specifically one of the large PBMs here in the United States. For those of you unfamiliar with what a PBM is, it is a pharmacy benefits manager. Basically, here in the US for-profit healthcare system, when you get your health insurance, it comes with your pharmacy benefits. So your benefits tend to be your medical benefits, such as when you go to the hospital, or when you go to a clinic, or when you get a checkup or something like that. And then there's your pharmacy benefits, which are the benefits that cover your drug prices, because drug prices, in case you didn't know, here in the United States are a little insanely expensive. Like a pen of insulin here in the U.S. can cost almost $100, depending on where you get it from and what your insurance provider is. But PBMs are the companies that manage your pharmacy benefits. And managing pharmacy benefits, basically, at least from articles I've read about PBMs here in the US, are not managing things quite well. In fact, if anything, it is believed that there is a sort of cabal among the large PBMs here in the US to keep drug prices at a specific rate, so that way patients are overcharged for medications that in other parts of the world, like hell, you don't even have to go that far. You just have to go south of the border into Mexico, or hell, even north of the border into Canada. And you will realize that, pharmaceuticals here in the US are overcharged, like significantly overcharged. Even if you have decent health insurance, you're going to be paying a hell of a lot of money out of pocket. More than the developing world pays for medications. Now, I understand that in the developing world, buying power may not be as strong as it is here in the United States, but nowadays in 2025, I think buying power here in the United States is getting close to third world levels of buying power. In case if you haven't been in the loop, I'm sure we're all aware that the U.S. economy nowadays is dog shit, and we do have to thank the current administration for that. I know some people would like to say that the old geezer who was in the White House for the past 4 years in his administration caused it, but no, I can genuinely say that the orange buffoon and his band of retards definitely did not help, especially not with those goddamn tariffs. It definitely sure as fuck didn't help, but that's beside the point. In regards to your medications, they're overpriced, especially here in the US. So, me personally, having worked for one of these PBMs that also has its own pharmacy, which I can't begin to tell you the ethical conflict that there is when you are a pharmacy benefits manager and you are also a company that has your own pharmacy. A pharmacy benefits manager is supposed to be a company that's supposed to be negotiating drug prices and also determining where you can get your drugs from. So a PBM will say something along the lines of, well, I need to make sure that okay, so you can get your drugs purchased at these specific pharmacies, and basically these are the pharmacies that you're able to get your drugs purchased from. And basically, when when the pharmacy benefits manager it comes up with where you can get your drugs from, some pharmacy benefits managers have their own pharmacy. For example, Caremark has CVS as their pharmacy, or Express Scripts has their own mail order service pharmacy as their pharmacy. And of course, these companies, like to double dip when it comes to getting your money. They're realizing, I can get money if I charge the members to you. I can get extra money on our own pharmacy if I charge our members to spend their money on our pharmacy instead of going to these other pharmacies. And when I used to work at this PBM, it was not uncommon to hear people call in and complain about why are my medications magically gone up by like $100+? Well, what seems to be what seems to be causing this? This angers me. Like I said, working in customer service, you get a lot of angry people. Hardly ever anybody who's actually happy to call in. But the biggest reason why your medications went up in price at the pharmacy that you're getting them at is because the pharmacy that you're getting at is not the preferred pharmacy by the PBM. The PBM prefers that you get your medications handled by their pharmacy. So if you're with Caremark or with Express Scripts, they want you to get your medications at their pharmacy specifically. Because if you get them with any other pharmacy, they're going to put in some kind of stupid rule where basically they artificially inflate the value of your medication in order to make sure that you're forced into their specific pharmacy. Pretty big ethical conflict of interest, and I do hope for the day where these companies get put in their place and stop doing bullshit like that to patients. But from my experience with the PBM I worked with, some in the beginning of my time there, it was all pretty standard. I was happy to get this job at this company, because before that I had been working at Kohl's. Now working at Kohl's fucking sucked. I worked there for a month and a half. It was my first job straight out of college. I needed something to help me pay off my car, and Kohl's was the first thing I could get a hold of. Finding a job here in the US is fucking horrible. Maybe that'll be a topic for another video. But after a month and a half of working at Kohl's and getting my ass chewed out by the store manager because apparently I didn't want to work on at times that he liked, and I only wanted to work unloading the truck every morning because I got used to it and I liked the people I was working with and it was like a chill environment for me. Apparently, nope. You gotta get out there on the floor and stand there at the front entrance and then man the register. Even though this was COVID times, and there was a sort of balance between there was people coming in and there was people not coming in. So at times you were just kind of standing there, doing nothing, and you just felt like you were just sitting there wasting the day away. But I was already searching for a new job at the time, but our store manager telling me that he was thinking of letting me go because he didn't like how I organized my schedule. I simply put down the paper, filled it out how this asshole wanted it, and I took my jolly ass back home and really hammered in finding a new job. And that's when I landed my first work from home call center job. Now, I like working from home personally. I know some people probably won't be able to actually experience working from home, or for those who have experience working from home, maybe it's not the environment that you like, because really when you work from home, you gotta get really used to being alone, because it's not like a traditional job where you're going to be with other coworkers and you're going to be commingling with everybody and talking and shooting the shit. You're pretty much going to be alone in front of a screen. And in terms of work from home, it's going to be mostly call center work that you're doing. Maybe sometimes it could be IT work or some other stuff like that, but primarily call center work. So it's going to be you and whatever person you get on the line. So my first months working at this PBM, the training was good. It was lengthy. The pay was spectacular. I do have to thank this job for giving me the money that I got to increase my Steam library to what it is now. This job essentially is what helped me save up quite a bit of money in the long run during the period of time that I was unemployed. But when I was building up my Steam library, before I had started this job, it was, puny, and then after I had finished my time with this job, my Steam library had grown exponentially. So, I gotta thank it for that. But what I can't thank this job for was the insane amount of mental health fuck-up that I experienced during my time there. So after training was over, they put you immediately on the phones. And you're handling callers who could be calling in for a couple of different things. One, since this is, you could have callers who are calling in, asking about their benefits. Usually things like, is this medication covered? My doctor prescribed this. Will my insurance cover this? Or they might ask something like, usually prior authorizations were a common thing that I recall people would call for. Now, prior authorizations, again, I'm not a pharmaceutical expert, I'm not a professional in that field, but from my experience with prior authorizations, they do feel like they were getting in the way of some patients of some doctors being able to prescribe medications for their patients. Now, sometimes I understand that, sometimes the pharmacy wants to make sure that this is something that the patient needs. It's usually like a weird dance between the pharmacy and the doctor themselves as to what exactly the patient can get as a medication. Personally, I think if the doctor prescribes something for you, then the patient, if the doctor has a way that they're doing things, I mean, they are a medical professional. If they're prescribing things to a patient, then they send the prescription over to a pharmacy, and the pharmacy fills out that prescription. End of story. Patient gets their medication. Good is good. We've got someone with their meds. Unfortunately, PBMs are that middleman that get in the way and tell the patient that, oh no, you can't have this because we don't cover that, or we cover it, but we only cover a certain amount of the medication for a certain period of time, things like that. And when you have to tell people something like that, especially when it comes to life-saving medications, it's one of those things that, like I said before, your mental health takes one hell of a beating, because there's cases of where some people call and you feel for them, because people will call and they're pretty sick, or people will call and they have ailments that need to be treated as soon as possible, and they're almost on the verge of getting a treatment done, or they're on the verge of getting a necessary surgery done, and they just can't get it done because the PBM has gotten in the way and said that, oh no, your medication is not covered, or we'll cover it, but now you're stuck paying like $100. In particular, there were some experience I remember where there was this one lady who called once, and she was trying to get a procedure done, which is a procedure that I know quite well how the process goes, because I know someone in my life who has experienced the same exact procedure. Of course, it wasn't done here in the United States, because doing it here in the United States is expensive, and ridiculously expensive. So I hear this patient calling in, and they're telling me they need to get some medications that they need to take in order to go in for a procedure. And the PBM says that they can only get their medications for $100 a pop. You know, it was 3 medications, $100 a pop for those 3 medications. And I recall that when I tell such information to this person on the line, they basically was not too happy about hearing that, and I understand. I mean, it's pretty gut wrenching and soul crushing when you have to tell something like this to somebody whose whole life has basically been turned upside down because you and your company that you work for has basically, you know, condemned them to a life of misery because you basically told them that you can't get the life-saving med that you need, and therefore, you know, you must now suffer because, you know, that's how the bastard of communism is. I mean, the bastard of capitalism is. I mean, the bastard of communism too, but I don't really think communism in this case can be applied. But no, it's still something that it's really hard to, and I still have memories of that particular phone call I took when I worked at this PBM, and it's still something that I will say kind of haunts me to this day, just because there's a couple of other calls I remember. There was another call where a patient called and they needed a life-saving medication and they couldn't get it because their PBM, the PBM I worked for, was denying it because it was an experimental medication. And if they didn't get the experimental medication, they would end up experiencing life in a completely different way in terms of their mobility. And hearing somebody panic over the phone to you, basically screaming at you and telling you that they're gonna lose their limb, not something that makes you really feel good. It was, I recall, it was one of my longer phone calls I took, and I absolutely just, I remember after I took that phone call, I know they tell at some of these call centers, well, if you get a difficult call where you get a caller who's racially insulting you, or they're calling you names, or they're screaming at you or something like, you need to take a moment for yourself. But in terms of taking a moment for yourself, you know, it's not really advised that you take a moment for yourself because, you know, these calls are coming in. You gotta make sure the business, you know, survives no matter what. You gotta make sure that you're offering, you know, all the fancy benefits that the business gives. Otherwise, you know, they're gonna lose members. The members are gonna defect to somewhere else. You know, we can't have that happen. You know, it was one of those things where when I worked in a healthcare customer service for this PBM. I felt like dog shit after doing that. After, you know, a week of doing that, you feel really shitty. I mean, I guess it goes in hand to why, you know, during that time I also, you know, had let myself go a bit. I gained a bit of weight. You know, I wasn't working out very well. My hours were not very amazing at this job either. I was working from noon till 9. And then afterwards, I changed my schedule because I thought a schedule change would be a good idea. So I went from working 5 days a week to working 4 days a week. I had Wednesdays off, but I was working Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 10:30 a.m. till 9:15 p.m. 4 days of the week, and that was really rough on my mental and physical health, especially my mental health. Physical health, like I said, I gained weight. I've lost a good chunk of that weight since then. Obviously now, you know, at my current age, I'm almost 30. I know for a fact that I can try and lose as much weight as I can, but obviously I'll never reach the exact physique that I had when I was in my early 20s, when I was in college. But my mental health in particular took one hell of a hit doing that. Because, like I said, when you work in a call center, you're going to get yelled at, of course. But when you work in a call center for something like healthcare, it's really hard, especially when you get instances of people calling in to tell you that, you know, that their life is going to be ruined or they might die because they can't get a medication. I've also experienced addicts on the line, people who will basically get mad that you can't give them a controlled substance, because we handled controlled substances as well. You basically, in terms of, basically you can't get them a controlled substance because their prescription called for a certain amount for a certain time, and obviously they can't get more because obviously these are highly addictive drugs, and they get mad at you that they can't get more of them. And in that case, you inform them this is how much your prescription is for and how long it's supposed to last for until your next refill, and then they get really angry that you can't get them more. And really in that sense, well, it's kind of hard to get you more when you still have several days left on the current prescription, on the current refill. You're gonna have to wait until the end of this to actually get more, because again, it's a controlled substance. It's heavily regulated. We can't just send this out like candy. Another thing I recall, this is one of the funnier ones though. The ones I kind of didn't feel as bad for was the gentleman who would call for medications that are male enhancement. I think gentlemen watching this, well, I mean, ladies too, you kind of understand what I mean by male enhancement. When your sausage is flabby and you can't get your sausage to stand upright like a pretzel. Those kinds of medications. Those were the funny ones. And you actually can identify which patients are calling about these medications for those kinds of uses, or the other use of these medications where it's actually in terms of more specifically in terms of your general health. It usually is based on the age of the patient and how much of the medication that they're getting. But those calls, I would say, were some of the funny ones, because it is funny hearing a 40-something, 50-something year old man get annoyed that they can't get their dick pills. And now it's like, oh, like, I can't get my pee-pee pills, and now how else am I supposed to well, I mean, I'm hoping you're dicking down your wife. But sometimes, some of these older gentlemen might be dicking down, girls who are younger than me. So in that case, it is kind of hard to feel bad for someone who is in that predicament. I'm like, I get it, dudes. I mean, personally, if I was in a situation like that, look, if my ding dong doesn't get hard anymore, then whatever, I don't really care. I mean, it's just a natural thing of aging. It's like your hair going gray. I never understood why men get so preoccupied with their hair turning gray. It's like, oh no, I'm graying, I'm getting old. Like, shit, I mean, I know I got one strand of gray hair on my head. You can't see it when I stream, but in IRL you can see the gray strand of hair, especially in sunlight. Kind of like my indicator that I'm getting up there in the years. But no, I mean, I know for a fact that in terms of my genetics, my hair is supposed to go really gray. I'm assuming somewhere in my 30s these next coming years. So if my hair gets gray, I really don't care. I mean, I'm just gonna leave it like that. I mean, if anything, it's a sign of like more ruggedness, I guess. I mean, I kind of prefer just leaving it like that. I'm not the type of dude who likes to paint his hair. I mean, it's just, to me, it just seems like something that I wouldn't want to do. Like, oh yes, I need to paint my hair, back to its normal brown color, because I can't handle being viewed as old. Like, no, like if I'm old, like, yeah, I'm old. I'm not a spry young chicken anymore. I mean, I am 28 now, but to me, after all the years, of stuff you experience, once you start getting near 30, you kind of feel like you're reaching that old age. Even though it's obviously, you still got more years left, but then again, we as humans don't know how long we live on this earth, which is, again, one of those things that, going back to my PBM job, a lot of the people that you get on the line don't know how much long they got left on this earth, and it's one of those experiences where, leaving the funny aspect of erectile dysfunction behind, going back to the really serious calls about things like cancer, or things like things like heart problems, or things like these that patients can call for. Those are calls that, like I said, when you yourself are one of the things that's responsible for somebody getting their drugs, and you basically can't get them their drugs even though you want to. Like, let me be honest here. Basically, if I could get any of those patients their drugs, without having to go through this whole ultra late stage capitalism bureaucratic nonsense, I would happily get them their medications. Hell, I think your medications should be free. Like, if you're already, I mean, personally, I think the United States should have a universal healthcare system where your tax dollars are paying into your healthcare, so that way, whether or not you're employed or not, you'll always have healthcare. And of course, the medications will either be paid for with your tax dollars to the point where the medications are pretty damn cheap, or they're completely free. Honestly, I think they should be completely free. I mean, we are the wealthiest country in the world. I don't know why the hell we can't have, free medications. I mean, obviously not free. I know some dipshits on the internet will be like, oh, excuse me, everything is not free. You have to pay for it. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Obviously, taxes pay for everything. But, I'd rather have my taxes pay off, healthcare services for every American in the country instead of, being used to destroy Palestine. I'd rather have my tax dollars go to that instead of giving it to Israel to bomb Palestine. I genuinely don't agree with my tax dollars being sent to Israel, and I don't agree with my tax dollars being sent to, all these random foreign wars and random countries that, are ass-kissing up to the United States, shit like that. Or, my money being spent on a useless military parade to celebrate some jackass's birthday. Things like that, are things that I don't appreciate my tax dollars being spent on, which I feel like Americans wouldn't be so mad about paying taxes if our taxes were actually being used on things that benefit us, like, our social safety net, or a universal healthcare system, or free education, or basically, not having to pay out of pocket for education. Things like that. Things that actually benefit. Things that actually give you more incentive to want to live here in the U.S. Things that actually make it a true privilege, as the current administration says, to live in the United States. But, no, working in a call center for a PBM sucks. I didn't enjoy it. I was getting paid. I was getting paid, hella bank, but I couldn't take it anymore. After a year and a half of working there, my mental health was just destroyed. By the time I got off, I was just irritable. I just wanted to sit here at my desk and play video games until I collapsed in front of my desk. It just wasn't something that I was, enjoying. I was making good money, but it kind of brings you back to the whole thing of like, yeah, you're making a lot of money, but at the same time, you feel miserable. And in the case of like, this isn't, what my career is. This isn't something that I want to make into a career, nor do I enjoy working in this type of thing, because to work in the American healthcare industry, you got to let go of your soul, to some extent. And when you're someone who has a soul that just does not want to, leave its body, it's really hard to get used to the nature of telling somebody to their face that I'm sorry, sir, I can't get you your med because your insurance won't cover it, and then they start crying or they get angry at you and they curse you out. And at the same time, it annoys me when I'm getting cursed out over the phone, but at the same time, when I'm getting cursed out over something like this, I can kind of feel for them, because this is a life-saving med that they need. Something like insulin, for example, for like a type 1 diabetic, that's an important medication that they need. And if your PBM is preventing them from getting that life-saving insulin, yeah, you feel like dog shit telling these people that to their faces. Well, not really to their faces, but over the phone. You basically, obviously you yourself are not directly responsible, but you feel some kind of guilt, because you feel like you're part of the reason why this person could die at any moment because they didn't get their insulin, or why this person now has to journey to probably Mexico or Canada if they can to get their medication if they're able to, or find hidden methods, or possibly even going on the deep web to get these kinds of medications. Which, I mean, it tells you a lot about how crappy the American healthcare system if we got to rely on the deep web for getting certain medications at a more affordable rate. But yeah, no, after working there for a year and a half, the call experience was rough. I was taking, by the time I was done, I'd been taking about over 100 plus calls a day, back to back at times, from, like I said, 10:30 a.m. to 9:15 p.m. during the later half of my time there. But what didn't help either was the work environment. My coworkers, I can't really talk in terms of my coworkers, because again, when you work in a call center, your coworkers, you don't really talk to them, because it's you alone with the patients or the callers that you get on the line. But my experience does come from management, and from the managers I had, and they were fucking horrible. At my time at this PBM, I went through several different managers, because we were constantly reorganizing teams over and over again. My first manager was chill at first, but then my first manager turned into an ass by the time I was near the end of my time there. Basically just breaking chain of command and thinking that they're my manager when I had a completely different manager near the end of my time there. That was one of the scummy things I recall from that manager. My second manager there was probably the one good one, and he left because he got promoted to something else, so he couldn't be our manager anymore. My third manager was quite possibly the worst. My third manager was someone who just didn't seem to give a shit that I was on their team. They didn't seem to, they didn't seem to even realize that I was there until basically like all of a sudden, like maybe 2 weeks after I was already on their team. They didn't even realize I was on their team. They didn't even send me a welcome email like the other two had before that. And they didn't even, acknowledge that I was there in any meetings or anything until like all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, so welcome to the team and blah, 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 blah. It demotivates you quite badly. And then during that time, I had realized that the 4x10 schedule I was working at that moment just wasn't, doing well for my mental health. And I did request a schedule change, and that wasn't approved because, my times were not doing very well. This is also when I learned that call centers tend to have some dog shit bathroom policies because, when you're talking constantly over the phone for several minutes, you need water in order to keep your voice from not going hoarse. And when you drink water, you gotta go take a piss often. So I was having to go take a piss often, and I had to get a lecture from my manager at the time, that from my manager, supervisor, whatever, at the time, to tell me how to drink water in order to avoid going to the bathroom so often. It was probably the most inhumane conversation I ever had with a supervisor about something, because I'm like, look, like, I'm human. I can't just hold on piss. I have to release it somehow, and drinking water I need to, or else my voice is gonna go, or my throat hurts. At one point my throat was hurting because I was talking so damn much at this job. But that supervisor manager, I think they got fired from what I recall, because one day I just came in and they just weren't there anymore, and then they rearranged it into my fourth supervisor group, which that supervisor was not really good. I wouldn't say he was horrible. Well, he, she, they. She, well, I wouldn't say she was terrible, or they were terrible, but basically they were just they just basically felt like, like, how would I put it, like the type who's willing to scold you because you didn't do well on your quality service, scores or whatever, and then afterwards, or if they nitpick at everything that you do wrong, because at this point my relationship with that employer was just starting to go sour. Like, I was just not giving a shit anymore, and I just didn't care anymore about wanting to be there. I was just like, I was doing everything I could to get fired at that point. And then, like, when I reached the end of it, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna quit. I didn't even give a 2 weeks notice. I just quit on one day, which ironically enough was also my supervisor's last day that day. So we were both quitting at each other. So I worked that day, and I clocked out, and I did not look back. And then came my unemployment phase, but that's not for this video. Basically, to sum things up, working at that PBM, the experience, the mental health drain from having to listen to people's really sad and tragic stories about their health and the quality of healthcare they're receiving here in the glorious nation of the United States. I'm obviously not being serious when I refer to this place as a glorious nation. I mean, I'm American. There's things that I like about being American, and there's things that I absolutely hate about being American. It's like our relationship with this country is like a love-hate thing. Like obviously, as an American, I wouldn't hesitate to defend the country if it gets attacked, like legitimately attacked. Like if they're like attacking, like, I don't know, like Miami or something. Like, yeah, we got to go defend it because somebody's trying to beef with us. But at the same time, like, I'm not gonna defend this place when it's like, bombing Iran unjustifiably for no actual reason other than to just defend Israel's bombing of Iran. Like, yeah, I'm not defending that. Like, no, like I don't give two shits about Israel, and I don't care about defending them. They're adults. They can defend themselves. We don't need to keep defending them from Iran, because they know pretty well that Iran could probably curb stomp them if they tried. But no, like, my main thing is that I genuinely, like, from my experience with this PBM, it was bittersweet. Mostly negative. I would still refer to it as one of the worst jobs I ever held, and that was mainly because of what happened after I'd quit. Now, I won't go into detail on what happened after I quit, in regards to my relationship with this company and what they tried to do to me after I had quit. But let's just say it just left a really sour taste in my mouth. Had I quit and that didn't happen, basically, it would have been, all fine and dandy, and I would just be like, it was a job that stressed me out, it was not pleasant, but, whatever, move on to the next thing. But because of what they had tried to do with me after that, That absolutely infuriated me, and I still label this as the worst employer I ever held. And I genuinely feel no sympathy for this company if it ever gets screwed over by the federal government one day. If the federal government actually, gets some balls and decides to actually crack down on PBM's, unethical practices. But no, healthcare and customer service are two things that don't go together, like capitalism and healthcare. Two things that just do not mix, and you don't ever want them to mix. Because if they do mix, it's a toxic thing. It's really bad for your mental and physical health. And in my case, that was the case. Like I said, I had quit this job in 2022, so it's been, about 3 years since I had quit that job now. And obviously now I'm working, like I said, in a completely different job. It's still customer service in a call center, but it's a completely different type of call center, not healthcare related. So in the line of work I'm doing now, you don't feel horrible when you tell somebody that you can't do this specific service for them at my current job, because this is a complete a business where it's not healthcare related. It's not people's people's actual lives are not on the line in this case. So in this case, it's one of those standard customer service jobs where someone calls, it's like, do you know how long I was on hold and I didn't get my service done and all that, like shit like that. In my current job, it's one of those cases where you're like, well, do you know how long I was on hold for? Well, yeah, I know you were on hold for a while, and I don't care. Let's just get what we need to get settled right now, so I could move on to the next caller. It's that case now, which makes you feel a little bit better, because I can actually sleep at night doing this kind of work. I'm not gonna lie, it's still a bitch to get yelled at constantly, but it's better than getting yelled at by someone who could possibly not be with us on this earth anymore in like a week or two if they didn't get their meds. But yeah, that is my story time. I know this went on for quite a while, and this is probably one of my longer vids, but I just wanted to get that off my chest. Working in call centers, I recommend it, but only if you have the mental capacity and the stomach and the spine to actually be able to handle these types of jobs. I feel like my experience in old MW2 lobbies back in the day, hearing people yell at you and over the dumbest of shit, or just online gaming back in the day, kind of helps you develop some kind of a backbone to this kind of work. But I don't recommend it to the faint of heart. You really need to have some experience in customer service and getting yelled at a lot by random people that you don't know, in order to get used to this. But maybe one day, I will find, that career job that I want to do in my field that I went to college for 3.5 years studying to actually do, in the field of media and entertainment. One day I'll get into it, but until then, this is what I'm doing right now. I am still searching for something else, because, always got to move on to the next best thing, because that really is the American dream in 2025 as a worker. Your current job, damn well you're not, as a Gen Z American, damn well your current job is not going to be your permanent job. When you find the next best thing that pays more and gives you better work to do and makes your life more fulfilling, then you move on to that thing instead, and so on and so forth. That's the reality of 2025 for a Gen Z American such as yours truly. Anyways, this is going on for too long. I think now we should call it a day here and conclude the video. Anyways, I'd like to thank y'all for watching. I hope you enjoyed my long ramble. If I put you to sleep, well, sorry about that. If I didn't, then yeah. Thank you for sitting through all this, and y'all have a great day. Peace.